All right, Dalton, now we're going to preview my school, my favorite team growing up, and still am a fan of this school right now. That is the Penn State Nittany Lions. But, man, it's getting a little bit frustrating to be a Penn State fan. Recently, for the second straight year, their only two regular season losses were to Ohio State and Michigan. But unlike 2022, they couldn't cap it off with a New Year's Six victory. They actually lost in the Peach Bowl, which I was actually at, to Ole Miss. Rough game in that one. So now James Franklin heading into his 11th season as head coach. Big questions now, Dalton, of, okay, where are you? Are you going to be a guy who can lead Penn State to wins over the conference's best teams, or are you always going to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, but always be a B tier Big Ten team right now? So that's kind of the big question with them, and obviously have an elite defense, new defensive, brand new coordinators on both sides of the ball. With Manny Diaz taking the Duke job as head coach, and they fired their offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich during the season last year as well. So new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle it this year, but. Really, Dalton, the one constant with Penn State besides losing to Ohio State and Michigan is that they will always have an elite defense. That should be the same thing in 2024.
Yeah, there's no excuse for him not to have a top 10 defense again. When you look at talented players, Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton, Dom DeLuca, Kevin Winston Jr., just at all three levels, man, they got playmakers, right? Especially in the passing game. You talk about pass rush and coverage. I mean, last year, again, it's the thing that keeps them in it, right? It's just their ability to rush the passer, their ability to cover. They're just so darn fast. They tackle well. They do everything you want in a defense. So that's the part that gives them the floor, right? Like there is no reason, kind of like Michigan with their defense, there's no reason for them to win less than 9 games on their defense alone. Like they're going to beat the Iowas and the Illinois and the Northwesterns of the world just because they're not going to give up any points. Like they're going to put up multiple shutouts and things like that. It's just a matter of them getting over the hump with their offense. But defensively, that's what makes them a top 15 team. And really, that's what gives them a chance to win, even against the Ohio States and Oregons of the world and Michigans and teams like that, where it's like we can keep games in a range that our offense can stay in.
Yeah, absolutely. The new defensive coordinator is Tom Allen, who was the Indiana head coach before he was fired last year. So should still be a really good defense. You mentioned the D-line linebacker unit with Kobe King there as well, and the safety room is really good with Kevin Winston Jr. The one question I have defensively is outside corner, but A.J. Harris was a former top 40 recruit a couple years ago, the Georgia transfer, Florida transfer. Jalen Kimber is a solid player too at corner, so that should be a little bit better at corner too, but a little bit of a question mark at corner. Big question mark, though, Dalton, is offensively, and not what you would think. Most people watching this video would say, oh, yeah, the big question is number 15 under center. No, it's not. The big question with them offensively is the supporting cast around number 15. I think Dalton, and I think you were right in the top 15 range with him, I think Drew Allar is a top 10 quarterback in the country. I really do. I think he's getting absolutely screwed by Penn State and what they have around him as of right now. He really was wrongly blamed last year. He had a top 20 passing grade in the country, kept the ball out of harm's way at an elite rate. Now, of course, he wasn't taking shots downfield, which is another thing that's wrong with Penn State and why Mike Yurcich should have been fired, and he was because they weren't taking shots downfield. He had the second lowest deep pass attempt rate in college football. This guy is a freaking rifle. He could throw it 80 yards downfield probably, and they're not throwing the ball downfield at all. So I know James Franklin was making fun of the reporter who's like, oh, why aren't you throwing the ball more downfield? It's a legit question, James. It really is because of how little they did last year. Penn State was 61st in pass blocking grade, 73rd in receiving grade last year, and you lose your top 2 wide receivers to the transfer portal in Dante Cephas and Keandre Lambert-Smith. And 3 of your starting offensive linemen, including a top 15 pick in Olu Fashanu, are in the NFL as well. So you lose 3 starting offensive linemen and your top 2 receivers. It's a lot of concern for the supporting cast around Drew Allar right now. The only glimmer of hope, Dalton, and maybe you can go into this a little bit more, is the arrival of Andy Kotelnicki, the former Kansas offensive coordinator, really innovative offensive mind, and hopefully he could do enough to help out Drew Allar next year.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with Drew, and the one thing he's not going to do, contrary to what everybody believes, he's not going to lose you ball games, man. A 1.1% turnover-worthy play rate last year. I believe Bo Nix was the only quarterback with better, right? I've never seen a quarterback that went through a whole season, threw 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, get more blame than Drew Allar.
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense. If your quarterback has 25 touchdowns and 2 picks, you're going to be like, wow, this guy's awesome, right? Now, there are moments where the accuracy especially wanes. Like, his ball placement isn't the best. That part is true. You did see that in the Ohio State game. Like, But it's not that he's so far off. It's just that he doesn't necessarily put the ball in a place where it maximizes like yards after catch. And he's not yet the best, especially horizontally, at leading receivers, right? But he does get it there, right? And he doesn't turn the ball over. And we saw moments where they would let him throw downfield. I remember a throw against West Virginia in the very first game. It was a touchdown that I was like, man, that looks special. Or there was a couple of bombs against Indiana that you're like, okay, there it is, right? So they do need to do it more often. But Drew's got a really, really high floor, man. When you talk about he doesn't screw anything up either. He's not going to give the game away. You know, you can blame him all you want for the Ohio State game, but they lost that game by what, a touchdown?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like they were in it. Their defense kept them in it, and Ohio State's got a great defense and a mismatch against those receivers you were just talking about, who even the ones who are gone now, right? So the thing with Kotelnicki's offense that's going to help Drew, I think at Kansas, other than maybe Devin Neal at running back, they don't have like a boatload of NFL caliber talent, especially at receiver and tight end. But they finished third in the country in receiving grade last year anyway at Kansas. That's an offense that allows a team to punch above its weight class, punch above its talent level. They motion more than anyone in the country. They'll do full tilt formation shifts before the play. They use every blade of grass on the field, width and depth. Like you talk about a team that's either going to go straight horizontal or straight downfield. That's what you want when you're talking about taking more shots. That's why they went and got Andy Kotelnicki. And that's why Jalen Daniels and even Jason Bean had success at Kansas, because he set them up with looks. Look, throwing the ball deep is not just about telling your ex, hey, go, and just, we'll just toss it up. It's jump. No, you have to set these things up.
Mm-hmm.
You set it up with the running game. And that's the part for Penn State where it should work. With Katron Allen, with Nick Singleton, they should be able to drag people down into the box with their running game and allow Allar to throw it over the top. So I think Kotelnicki is the big glimmer of hope here. And I think it was a great hire, a spectacular hire, right?
Agreed.
People need to get off Allar's back, though. I mean, that just straight up, yes, against Michigan and Ohio State, he didn't play great. But find me the quarterback who did. Michael Penix didn't play good against Michigan either. So I'm not really in that boat. I think Allar can be really, really good. They just need to learn this offense and find some wide receivers, and they've got a shot to make the playoff with Allar at the helm.
I think he could be one of those guys, Dalton. Actually, Matt Miller, who does a great job at ESPN, NFL draft analyst, he said he's actually been talking to scouts, and a lot of them saying, listen, man, there's a lot of fans. I know the draft analysts don't love Drew Allar. There's a lot of fans in the NFL, front offices who love this kid already. So he could be a guy that like kind of surprises people, like, oh, how the heck is this guy a starting quarterback in the NFL when he wasn't that good in college? Kind of like a Justin Herbert a little bit, right? Justin Herbert struggled at Oregon a lot, and all of a sudden now he's one of the best in the world. I'm not saying he's gonna be that good, but I'm just saying like there's some guys who just aren't that great in college, but that's really because of the situation, and they get to the NFL and they're a lot better, right? So I think that could be a case with Drew Allar as well. I love that breakdown of Kotelnicki's offense too, which I'm really excited about. That's one thing I'm holding on hope for, is because of that. And also the run game, right? The run game is going to be really good, and the leader of that is Nicholas Singleton. Now, we could have gone with either of the running backs here, Katron Allen or Nick Singleton. We went with Singleton here. He's been the more versatile of the two players, I would say, through his first 2 years, and kind of the bigger name as well, I would say. Former 5-star recruit, top 100 player in EA College Football 25 as well. He was 7th among Power 5 running backs with 307 receiving yards this past season as a true sophomore. And over the last 2 years, he's averaging 3.7 yards after contact per attempt, which is second among Big Ten running backs in that span as well. So really good athlete for the position, good size at 6 feet tall, 226 pounds. He's a really good runner and receiver. I'm a big fan of Nick Singleton. I don't think he's as good as most people think he is. I think most people think he's like one of the best running backs in the country and one of the best running backs in the draft. It's such a loaded year for running backs that I'm not willing to say that. I don't think he's a top 10 running back in the country, but he and Katron Allen for sure make up one of the best running back duos that we have in college football right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, those two guys are going to be the foundation of their offense, like I mentioned. Again, people think, oh, Kansas and Kotelnicki, it's wide open, it's high flying. They still want to run the ball. They just do it a little different way than a lot of other Big Ten teams. But Singleton and Allen certainly give them a good base to work with. I'll tell you, a top 10 guy we had in our safety unit rankings who gives them a real good foundation on defense on the back end, Kevin Winston Jr., man. He was our number 4 safety in the country, 3rd in the FBS in run D grade. Didn't officially miss a tackle last year. I think the one missed tackle he had was on a play that got called back for holding. Look, this is as well-rounded and fundamentally sound, not just a safety, any defensive player in the country that we have. The only safety in the country last year with an 85-plus grade in run D and coverage. Like, he is so well rounded. Like there's such a high floor on his game, and we'd like to see him make another play or two here or there on the ball, but like he also doesn't get thrown at that much because he's always in such good position. Like you talk about almost a coach's clinic tape on how to play safety, and Kevin Winston Jr. brings it. Look, Penn State lost their top 3 corners last year, and I still think they're going to be able to replace those guys and be just fine because they have Winston on the back end making things happen in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft next year as a safety, which is saying a lot considering safeties rarely go in the first round nowadays. He is truly a special player. Also, like a 99th percentile gas score, so 99th percentile athlete as well, right? So he's a elite athlete, and Penn State could have a couple first-round picks on their defense with him and Abdul Carter as well. We could have talked about too. But all right, bottom line time now, Dawn. What is the bottom line on this Penn State team? It feels like it's been the bottom line for the last few years of like, okay, elite defense, but okay, is this passing game going to be enough? What's the bottom line for the Nittany Lions heading into 2024?
I think they got a pass. They maybe more than any other team in the country over the past half decade or so that only 4 teams made the playoff, right? And it's just so hard because like one game, and you can, especially when they have head-to-heads against Ohio State and Michigan every year before this, it's like you lose one or both of those games, you're just done, right? Mm-hmm. With a 12-team playoff now and Penn State almost constantly finishing in the top 12 to 15, I think the cutoff is it's playoff or bust, right? I'm not saying that they have enough offensively to win a national title. We don't think that. They need to make a playoff because, okay, so now it's like we're top 12 every year, and now they're letting the top 12 in. You better be in there because the talent they have on their defense, a quarterback that just threw 2 interceptions in a whole season, a new offensive coordinator, which is there however many new offensive coordinator they've had since James Franklin's been there. You have the count. I lost count of them. This is the standard. At the very least, the playoff has to be the standard. They have to find a way to get in. If they find themselves even as the first team out of it, I think you've got a disappointment, and I think you might have some hot seat under James Franklin because they've established we know they're really good. That's old news. We know they're top 20, top 15, top 12. Stay in that top 12, make the playoff. Give yourself a chance to win a playoff game. Their defense, they could beat anybody in the country with their defense. Anybody, even a Georgia or an Ohio State. Get there, give yourself a chance, see where it goes. But I think there may not be another team in the country where the cutoff is so clear, where it's you either make the playoff or you don't.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say this for some people who want for James Franklin to be fired. I push back on that a little bit because I think it's a little bit of the grass is greener syndrome with that. Penn State has not won 10 games this consistently since like the heyday of Joe Pa, right? So like we're talking like James Franklin has actually done a really good job. I think he's done such a good job though that he's almost like he's staying stagnant. And I think Penn State fans are like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? You know, like this is great. We're going to New Year's Six bowl games like every year, which is something we haven't done in a long time. But I think Penn State fans are getting a little impatient with that, and it's like, okay, now we gotta beat Ohio State. Now we gotta beat Michigan, right? If we're beating everyone else, it's like, no, you're not them, right? You're not a national title contender right now, and until you boost up your facilities in NIL, you're not gonna be that. And Penn State has consistently been behind in NIL. For the last few years too, so they're getting better at that. But I will push back a little bit on the talks of him getting fired, just because it's like who are you gonna hire? Like you're a top 15 job in the country. James Franklin's a top 15 coach in the country, right? So I kind of get worried that they might turn into like a Nebraska, right? Where Nebraska was doing well under Bo Pelini, but wasn't taking that next step. They fired Bo Pelini, and they were freaking terrible, right, for a long time. So I'm worried about that they are just going to fire a coach just for being really good but not great. It's hard to be a great coach nowadays in college football. So that's the one thing I would say about James Franklin and his job security. But it does feel like if they don't make the playoff this year, I don't think he'll get fired, but I do think there'll be some talks heading into 2025. I think you're right about that. There will be some hot seat talks with James Franklin if they don't make the playoff. Also because it's a manageable schedule. I'm looking at the schedule right now, Dalton. There's only one game that I think Penn State won't be favored in, and that's the Ohio State game when they host Ohio State. So that's going to be, they're at USC, but I think they'll be favored in that game. They are at West Virginia week 1, but I think they'll be favored in that game. They should win every other game, right? So this new no division thing in the Big Ten might be advantageous for Penn State in that they avoid Michigan, right? So I think this is actually a pretty manageable schedule, and I think 11-1 season is certainly possible. Now, of course, Penn State seems to lose a game every year they're not supposed to, but I do think an 11-1 season is possible. And if they do that, even if they lose twice, they could still make the college football playoff, right? Too. So I think college football playoff is certainly well within the cards for the Nittany Lions this upcoming season. But it's a tale as old as time, man. It's gonna be an elite defense, but that gives you a high floor. But how much the passing game improves is going to determine how high of a ceiling you have. So that's what we got for the Nittany Lions. Heading into 2024, again, we're doing this for every single one of the 70 Power 4 teams. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single one of them.